Have you ever felt surrounded by people and yet completely alone? Like the world is screaming around you, but your heart is silent, dry, almost empty. Perhaps you know this pain well, the kind of loneliness that can't be resolved with physical presence. The one that hurts in your chest, silences your soul, and makes you ask, God, is the Lord still with me? If this question has already ripped your heart out, you need to hear what is about to be revealed. Because today Jesus speaks to you, and what he has to say can radically change the way you view your loneliest moments. It's no coincidence that you got here. It is not the work of chance or an algorithm. There is something spiritual happening now. You were led by God to this message because there is an answer that your heart needs to receive. Most people never realize this, but today you will. There is a secret hidden amidst the pain of loneliness that has been ignored by many, but not anymore. What you will discover in this video goes far beyond comfort. It is a spiritual key for you to overcome this emptiness that insists on screaming in the silence of your nights. The Bible reveals that even the great men and women of God faced moments of profound loneliness. And yet, it was in these moments, in the darkest, quietest, most uncomfortable places, that Jesus was most present. You will understand, through real and sacred stories, how loneliness can be the fertile soil where God plants something eternal in you, the type of presence that does not depend on human company, but that completely transforms the environment around it. Jesus speaks to you, and he wants to restore everything that silence tried to erase. Take a deep breath and open your heart to what's to come. This is not just another video. This is a calling, an answer, a personal message that Jesus speaks to you. Yes, with you who carry in your chest a loneliness that no one sees. With you who seek in Christian spirituality a deeper meaning for your emotional pain. There is something right now moving in the spiritual world, and you have been guided here because God does not want you to continue facing this alone. His presence is not a distant concept. It's real, it's alive, and it's about to touch your spirit in a way you may have never experienced before. Most people ignore what Jesus revealed about this type of pain, but today you will find out. And this discovery could change everything. If this message is starting to touch your heart, declare in the comments, I trust in Jesus. This sentence of yours may be exactly what another afflicted soul needs to read right now. Your faith can lift someone up. Your comment could be the hug someone prayed for. And if this word has touched you even a little, click the like button. This is not just a gesture. It is an act of faith, of evangelization. By liking, you are allowing this message to reach other lives who are also crying out for healing and direction. You're not here by chance. Jesus brought you here for a reason. And what he will reveal to you in this video could change everything. Now get ready, because the pain you feel could be the exact point where God will begin his greatest transformation. He was there, lying motionless, dusty with time and forgotten by the crowd. A man who for 38 years was trapped on the edge of a miracle, but never touched by it. A stagnant body and a soul screaming in silence. Every day he saw people pass him by, some in a hurry, some indifferently, many with hope, but none with enough compassion to extend a hand. The pool of Bethesda, surrounded by 5 porches, was full of sick, blind, paralyzed people. But for that man, the greatest paralysis was not physical, it was emotional, it was spiritual, it was the cruel, corrosive feeling of being ignored by everyone, of being visible but invisible, hearing footsteps around but not feeling anyone nearby, of praying and not being heard, of waiting and not being remembered, to exist without being loved. Until Jesus arrived, and when he looked at him, he didn't ask how long he had been there, nor if anyone would help him. Jesus saw something that no one saw. Jesus heard the cry that no one heard. And then he asked, "Do you want to be healed?" John 5:6. A simple question, but one that carries overwhelming spiritual depth. Because before healing the body, Jesus wanted to heal something deeper, The feeling of forgetfulness, rejection, abandonment. What this man needed most was not just to get up. It was knowing that someone finally saw him, and it wasn't just anyone. He was the Son of God. How many times have you felt like this man? Surrounded by people, but isolated in the heart. Maybe you've even learned to hide your pain well, smiling in meetings, being polite on the street, even giving advice. But inside, something screams. An uncomfortable silence echoes, even when there are voices around. And what hurts isn't being alone. It's feeling like no one cares. It's looking around and not finding arms ready to lift you up. It's feeling like your struggle is invisible to the eyes of the world. But today, you need to know, Jesus speaks to you. And he doesn't just see your pain, he calls you by name. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. And the time to rise up is coming. Most people never realize that the greatest miracle in that paralyzed man's history was not walking. It was to be seen, it was to be remembered. He heard the voice of God saying, "Get up, take up your bed and walk." John 5:8. Because there are moments in life when the greatest gift is not the answer to prayer, but the certainty that we have been heard. Maybe you've been waiting for something for years, a cure, a sign, a change. And every time you try to move, something blocks you. The lack of support, the tiredness of the soul, the disappointment in people, the frustration with God, and doubt begins to whisper, "Has he forgotten me?" But Jesus does not forget. He never gets distracted, never arrive late. And today, he is stopping in front of your story. Not because someone asked, but because he loves you. Maybe you think, "I no longer have the strength." But Jesus is not asking you for strength. He is offering you presence. You don't have to be strong to be restored. You just need to be willing to open your heart. Because when Jesus speaks to you, something in the spiritual world moves. The invisible chains begin to break. The lies you believed about yourself begin to crumble. And even if no one has reached out to you until today, heaven is stretching now. If this word is touching your soul, declare in the comments, "Jesus sees me," because that sentence could be exactly what someone else, in silence, also needs to read. Your testimony can be the breath that a tired heart is looking for. Your faith, even small, can be the starting point of great liberation. And if you are feeling this presence, if the Holy Spirit is generating something within you, click the like button. Not out of vanity, but as a spiritual act. By liking, you help this message reach other lives that are feeling forgotten and alone right now. Yes, your gesture can be a lifeline for someone. And by subscribing to this channel, you join a community where no one has to fight alone, because Jesus speaks to you and he also speaks through you. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Because there's a kind of void that not even the most sincere hugs can fill. And what you'll hear next, it can completely change the way you look at the holes in your heart. The sun burned brightly over the sand as she approached that well. It was not the usual time to fetch water. It was the hottest, the most uncomfortable, but also the emptiest. Most women went in the morning or late afternoon, but she didn't want to be seen. I had already been looked at too much, judged too much, hurt too much. His steps were silent, but his heart screamed inside. There was something inside her that no one could fill, a thirst that wasn't physical, an emptiness that did not cease, even when the pitchers were full. She was a Samaritan, rejected by the Jews, rejected by the women of her city, and perhaps even by herself. And yet that day, Jesus was waiting for her, sitting, alone, as if he knew she was coming, as if he had made an appointment with her soul and not just her tired body. And it was there, in that unlikely place, that something extraordinary happened. "Whoever drinks the water I give him will never be thirsty again." John 4:14. This phrase, coming from the mouth of Jesus, went through that woman's heart like a ray of light goes through the darkness. It was as if someone, for the first time, not only saw her, but understood her deepest pain. Not the pain of carrying jugs, but the pain of carrying guilt. that of collecting rejections. To live as if you were whole on the outside, but broken on the inside. She had had 5 husbands, and the man she lived with now wasn't even hers. Society condemned her. Religion despised her, but Jesus revealed it, and at the same time, he restored it. Because before pointing out their mistakes, he offered something that no one had ever offered: living water, acceptance, transformation, real love. How many times in your life have you felt this way? Going from place to place, from person to person, from objective to objective. And still the emptiness remained. Maybe you've already tried to fill it with friendships, relationships, career, compliments, even distractions. But when the night comes and the silence speaks louder, all that's left is that hole inside your chest, a lack of meaning, a thirst that never seems to cease, and the most difficult thing, the feeling that no one understands, that no one really sees, but Jesus sees. He saw that woman, he sees you, and he's not waiting for you to change to love you. He's loving you to transform you. This is why Jesus speaks to you now, not with condemnation, not with demands, but with compassion. He knows the name of your pain. He knows the exact point where your soul lost itself. And more than that, he is offering you something that the world cannot give, something that cannot be exhausted, cannot be bought, cannot be replaced. The real presence of God, a fountain within you that transforms the desert into a garden, that makes the void an altar, that changes the story from the heart. She went to the well to get water, but came out carrying a call, a mission, a new identity. That despised woman became the first evangelist in her city, because whoever is touched by Jesus does not come back the same. Whoever drinks the water he offers no longer needs to live searching outside for what can only be found inside. And that is exactly what he is offering you now. If this message speaks directly to your heart, write in the comments, "Jesus fills my void." Your statement could be the key to someone else realizing they are not alone. Your words can be like the voice of Jesus, echoing to someone who is still at the edge of the well, thirsty, ashamed, afraid. And by commenting, you're not just expressing yourself, you're taking a spiritual stance, declaring that your thirst has an end, that your heart is no longer adrift, that your interior can indeed be restored by his presence. And here comes the most amazing part of this story, because there is a kind of prayer that has no words, only tears. And even these, Jesus listens. And what you will experience now may change the way you view even your silences. She was on her knees. The eyes were red, the face wet with tears, and the heart crushed under the weight of years of waiting and silence. Every year she went up to the temple with the same prayer on her lips, a plea that no one heard, but that took over his entire being. Inna wanted a child, but what hurt her most wasn't the child's absence. It was the feeling of being ignored by God. With each new cycle, with each new negative, his soul seemed to weaken a little more. It was as if the sky was locked, and his pain echoed in vain. Even the priest, seeing her crying and babbling without sound, thought she was drunk. But no, she wasn't drunk. I was exhausted, wounded, dehydrated inside, and yet he continued praying. It was still there, crying out in silence. Because when the words run out, the heart begins to speak in a way that only God understands. She spoke from her heart, only her lips moved, and her voice was not heard. As Samuel 1:13. This verse is a delicate painting of what many live in secret, silent prayer. The tear that drips onto the pillow, the gaze lost in the sky, begging for an answer. Hope suffocated by years of frustration. Anna represents everyone who has prayed and not received. Everyone who has ever asked and waited and waited and waited. It represents you who may have asked yourself, is God really listening? And today's answer is, it is. Always has been. Jesus speaks to you even when you don't speak with words. He hears what no one else hears. He captures the secret language of pain. And just like with Hannah, there are times when God doesn't respond immediately because he is preparing something bigger than you can imagine. Anna didn't just receive one son. She received Samuel, a prophet, a judge, a milestone in the history of Israel. God didn't just respond, he overcame it. But to do so, Anna had to reach this point of total surrender, to deliver not only the request, but the entire heart. Maybe you are living exactly this phase, the silence, the wait, the prayer that seems to hit the ceiling. And maybe you've stopped praying out loud because you feel like it's no use anymore. But pay attention, your whispers are not lost. Your tears are not ignored. The Holy Spirit intercedes for you with groanings that cannot be expressed, Romans 8:26. And that means that even your silence is being translated in heaven. It is not the absence of faith. It is the most raw and real faith there is. Because trusting even without seeing, praying even without hearing, remaining even without understanding, this is what moves the heart of God. If this message is touching your heart, tell us in the comments, I trust in God's timing. It may seem like a simple phrase, but it carries tremendous spiritual power. Your comment may lift someone up who is about to give up. It can remind a grieving soul that he is not praying alone. And if that word found an echo in your spirit, click the like button so that others can also be blessed. Your leap of faith could be just what the algorithm needs to get that message to someone else who's in tears right now. By liking, you help this word of hope reach those who most need to hear it and who are not forgotten. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, do so now. Not just to receive new videos, but to be part of something bigger, a community of faith, healing, and restoration. You don't have to go through this waiting process alone. Here, Jesus speaks to you and speaks to many other hearts who are going through the same path. But what happens next could change the way you see everything, because there is a story in which someone reached the limit, to the point of wishing for death. And it was exactly at this rock bottom that God spoke most strongly. What comes now will show you that even when you think it's over, God is just beginning. The silence of the cave seemed to shout louder than any crowd. The prophet Elijah, who once boldly faced the prophets of Baal, now found himself in the desert, exhausted, wishing for death. He lay down under a juniper tree and asked God for his life to be taken. "That's enough, Lord." These words did not come from someone weak or cowardly. They came out of a man who was on edge, a man who had already won great spiritual battles, but who now succumbed under the weight of a tiredness that was more of the soul than the body. Elijah wasn't just afraid. He was alone, and when loneliness combines with exhaustion, even the strongest fall. This is where many find themselves today, people who have already been a reference for others, who was once a prophetic voice in someone's life, but today he feels like he can't take it anymore, which is on the verge of collapse, who thinks, God, if you're still with me, why do I feel this way? And it was there, in that desperate escape, that God revealed himself in a different way. He didn't come in the strong wind, not even in the earthquake, not even in the fire. It came in the soft whisper, in the silence that calms, in the presence that does not require performance. God did not bring accusation. I brought care. He sent an angel with bread and water. And the order, get up and eat, because the journey will be very long for you. 1 Kings 19:7. Before giving direction, God gave sustenance. Before demanding anything, he provided the essentials. Because he knew Elijah didn't need a sermon. I needed rest, of consolation, of food. And you, maybe you need the same thing now. How many times have you gone to bed too tired to continue? Have you ever felt without the strength to even pray? Have you ever thought about giving up everything, not because you no longer love God, but because the weight of the journey has become unbearable? Elijah understands you, and Jesus understands you even more. He knows your escapes. He knows about your desire to disappear. And yet, he sends comfort, sends sustenance, send living word, because Jesus speaks to you even when no one else is around. Even when all you want is to disappear, he arrives with bread and water for your soul. He restores it carefully. He doesn't scream. He whispers, And in that whisper, he reminds you, you are not alone. Most people don't understand that the end of the line can actually be the beginning of a revelation. Elijah thought everything was over. But it was from there, from that cave, that God raised him to anoint kings, prophets, and fulfill his mission until the end. Sometimes it is at the darkest point of the journey that the purest light appears. When you feel like you have nothing left, it's because God is about to show you that He is everything. If this message found your heart hurt and tired, comment now, "Jesus is my support." May these words echo not only in the comments, but in heaven. And let someone, when reading them, know that they are not fighting alone. Your comment could be the breath that another soul needs to not give up. And remember, you don't have to be well to be loved by God. You just need to be willing to be touched by Him. Did it make sense to you? So click the like button now. This may seem simple, but it is a leap of faith. When you like this video, you are telling the spiritual world, "I choose to continue." And that click can make this message reach someone who is lying down emotionally, wanting to give up on life. In doing so, you participate in a work greater than you realize, a work of restoration and life. And if you are not yet part of this community, subscribe to the channel now. Here you will be reminded daily that Jesus speaks to you, and He speaks with power, even when everything around seems silent. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Because there is a silent fear that paralyzes many people, the fear of walking without company, and what you'll hear now could completely transform the way you face life's loneliest phases. He was faced with the greatest responsibility of his life. Joshua, a faithful servant, now called to lead all the people of Israel after the death of Moses. Imagine carrying that weight. Imagine looking at a crowd waiting for direction, support, decisions, and deep down, feel that chill in your soul. What if I'm not enough? It is not difficult to understand what Joshua was facing. The loss of Moses represented more than the absence of a leader. It was the rupture of an era. And now he was alone, without the figure that always took the lead. Without the comfort of the helper position, it was him and the stranger. How many times have you felt this way? Facing a new challenge, a new cycle, a new phase. And even surrounded by people, did you feel that the responsibility was too big for you? That maybe no one really understood what was weighing on their shoulders? Joshua knew that feeling. But so does God. And it was exactly at that point, when fear threatened to paralyze the new leader, that God's voice broke out with divine clarity. "Did I not command you? Be strong and courageous, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." Joshua 1:9. This is not just a phrase of encouragement, it's a promise. It is the declaration that even when you feel exposed, insecure, out of place in your own journey, Jesus speaks to you. And when He speaks, loneliness turns into strength. Insecurity gives way to faith. Joshua was not called to lead in his own right. It was chosen, and God's choice is always accompanied by His presence. What scares you today? What new path is before your feet? What responsibility is weighing on your hands? Know that you are not on this mission alone. God doesn't put you in new places to abandon you. He goes with you. He crosses the unknown alongside you. He is already in the places you haven't even reached yet. The transition can be scary, leaving behind the comfort of what was already known. Taking on the main role when you only knew the supporting role. But it is in this place that God likes to act. He takes us out of the safety zone not to expose us, but to elevate us. It was like that with Joshua. It was like that with so many others. And it's like that with you. Fear is natural. Butterflies in your stomach are inevitable. But God's presence is supernatural, and she is enough. God did not ask Joshua to be perfect. He asked for courage. And courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is decision. It is trusting that even though you are trembling, you are being supported by an invisible, firm, eternal hand. And when everything inside you says, "I can't do it," remember, the call does not depend on your strength, but on the strength of the one who called. If this word spoke to your heart, write in the comments, "God goes with me." May this declaration become a spiritual milestone in your life. May you read each comment as confirmation that others are also facing their deserts with faith. Your comment could be the encouragement someone needs today. Don't underestimate the power of a public testimony. You have been called, you have been separated, and you are not alone. Jesus speaks to you. If this message gave you direction or renewed your courage, share it with someone who is also facing a new beginning. Share this word with someone who needs to remember that they were not left behind. And here comes the most impressive part of this story, because there is a pain even deeper than the fear of the new. It is the trauma of having been rejected, forgotten, left behind. And what you will see now is living proof that what others discarded, God rescues, raises, and uses to transform a generation. He was the favorite son, the one who had big, colorful, vivid dreams. Jose carried too many promises for such a young heart. He believed in them sincerely, without malice, without pride. But the sparkle in Joseph's eyes awakened what is darkest in the human heart: envy. Those who should have been his protectors, his own brothers, turned traitors. On an ordinary day like any other, Jose went out to meet his family and never came back the same. He was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, torn from everything I knew. And the most painful, it was not the price paid for his life. It was abandonment, the feeling of being left aside by those who had the duty to love him. The betrayal that breaks not only family ties, but trust in love. Joseph's pain was not just physical. It was a wound to the soul. Anyone who has been abandoned knows it's not just what happened that hurts. The silence afterwards hurts. The emptiness hurts. The echo of the question that never leaves your mind hurts. Why? But it is in this dark scenario that God writes one of the most impactful stories in the Bible. Because while Joseph was falling to emotional, spiritual, and literal rock bottom, God was already writing his ascension. What Joseph's brothers planned for evil, God was preparing as the way. Genesis 50:20 powerfully declares, "You meant evil against me, but God turned it for good." Jose was torn from his reality, but he was never torn from his purpose. Even in Egypt, even in prison, even in silence, God was working. And this reveals something powerful. The abandonment of men can be the starting point for God's plans. The rejection that broke you could be exactly the push that will lead you to your mission. Think a little. Who left you? Who did you trust and turn your back on when you needed it most? Maybe you're still trying to understand why you were treated this way. Maybe you convinced yourself it was your fault, that you weren't enough, that deserved to be left aside. But Jesus speaks to you now. You are not left behind. You have been set apart for something greater. Sometimes God allows certain people to abandon us because if they remained by our side, they would try to steal the glory of what he is going to do. Joseph had to pass through Egypt to reach the palace. Abandonment was the bridge, not the end. If this message is touching your heart, write in the comments, "God transforms pain into purpose." Let this phrase not just be a comment, but a prophetic statement about your story. Your comment could be the encouragement someone needs today. Maybe someone is on the verge of giving up, and upon reading your statement, finds the strength to continue. You may have been rejected by people, but you have never been rejected by God. While others turned their backs on you, he prepared you for something greater. Nothing was in vain. Not the pain, not the waiting, not the silence. Everything is being used for a perfect plan that has yet to be revealed. God's presence never left you, even when it seemed like everything was lost. And when the day of the turning point arrives, you will understand that each tear, each absence, each void was creating space within you for something great to be deposited. And it will not be for your exaltation, but for the world to see. Jesus speaks to you, even in abandonment. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Because there is a pain even more silent than abandonment. It is feeling invisible. Being in the middle of a crowd and still feeling like no one sees you, no one hears you, no one notices that you are disappearing inside. And what this woman experienced can change the way you see everything. She had no name, at least not in the history that the Bible records. And that in itself says a lot. Because sometimes the pain is so old, so continuous, so tired, that even our name seems to be forgotten. That woman had been bleeding for 12 years. 12. Imagine living with a wound for more than a decade. Not a visible wound, but one that eats away from the inside. How isolating. That takes you away from socializing. That even separates you from worship. She was considered unclean, unwanted, untouchable, and therefore invisible. And the cruelest thing about all this is that no one realizes that the worst part isn't the blood. It's loneliness. It's living surrounded by a crowd and still not being seen. Not being heard, not be touched, not being loved. Maybe you know this feeling well. The room full, the heart empty, the laughter around, and you sinking inside. People who pass by you as if you weren't there. And then, that woman without a name, without strength, without a place, makes the boldest decision of her life to go to Jesus, but not head on. She didn't want the spotlight. I just needed a chance. One touch, and that's what she did. He passed through the crowd, sneaked away. He bowed, and he touched the hem of the cloak. And in that instant, everything changed. Luke 8:46 is clear. Someone touched me, for I perceived that power had gone out of me. Jesus for everything. Look around, and he asks who it was. The disciples try to minimize the situation after all. A crowd was crowding him. But Jesus knew. Someone didn't squeeze him. Someone touched it with faith. And he never ignores this. Do you understand this? The silent faith, the hidden quest. The prayer cried into the pillow. Jesus understands. He feels. He stops for you. Because Jesus speaks to you, even when no one else listens, even when everything seems to scream that you don't matter. He calls you daughter. That's what he said to that woman. Daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. She arrived hidden and left restored. She arrived invisible and left recognized. And maybe you are exactly at that point. Tired of feeling invisible, to be strong all the time. Of pretending you're fine while you bleed inside. But today, Jesus is passing by. And if you extend the hand of faith, even if it's silently, he will feel it. He will stop. And he will call you son from a daughter. Because you were never just one in the crowd. Never. Jesus sees every timid step, every attempt to believe again, every cry that comes out in the form of a sigh. He knows you deeply. And nothing goes unnoticed before him. If this message spoke to your heart, comment right now, Jesus sees me. Declare with faith. Because this is not just a sentence, it is an eternal truth. And your comment could be the encouragement someone needs today. It could be proof that no one is alone on this journey. That woman was healed not because she screamed, but because she believed. And today, the same presence that touched that woman touches you. Jesus speaks to you in the silence, in the dark, in the middle of the crowd. He knows exactly where your pain is hidden, and that's where he will heal you. Get ready, because something even deeper is about to be revealed. The next story is about who stopped waiting, about the one who saw everyone move forward while he remained stagnant, and what happened there will shake everything you believe about time, help, and destiny. For 38 years, he lay next to the pool, a man without a name, but with a pain that echoes in many hearts to this day. Property. Forgotten, he saw others arriving and leaving healed. He heard the hurried footsteps of those running at the sign of the movement of the waters. But he remained on the ground. A paralyzed body, but an even more tired soul. And perhaps the biggest wound wasn't even in the atrophied muscles, but in the hope that faded every day. Because there is no greater pain than seeing everyone moving forward while you remain in the same place. That constant waiting. The feeling that life is not looking at you, that grace does not reach you, that God's time is always for others, The despair of thinking that maybe you have been forgotten. John 5:7 records this man's speech in a cutting way. I have no one to help me. How many times does this phrase echo in your mind too? I have no one. When friends move away, when the family doesn't understand, when colleagues follow their routines and you struggle just to get out of bed. This speech reveals more than a request for physical help. It's a cry of abandonment, a lament of profound loneliness, a confession. I'm still here, but I don't know why anymore. His soul, like that of many today, was soaked with tiredness. And then Jesus appears. But Jesus doesn't come running with buckets of water. He doesn't move the tank or summon crowds. He approaches in silence. And he asks the most unexpected question for someone in that condition. Do you want to be healed? John 5:6. It even seems cruel at first glance. Like this? Of course he does. But Jesus wasn't just asking about the body. He was poking the soul. It was saying, do you still believe? Is there still faith in there, or has your pain killed your hope? Because sometimes what paralyzes us is not the circumstances, but how much we have already given up inside. But when Jesus speaks to you, he doesn't just bring healing, he brings rebirth. At that moment, the man did not respond with faith. He responded with regret, I have no one. But you see, that was exactly what Jesus wanted to hear. Because when you've tried everything, when you have no one else, that's when he shows you that you are enough. He doesn't need methods, not even intermediaries. Jesus only needs you and your surrender. He said, get up, take up your bed and walk. And the miracle didn't start in the body. It started in the soul. It started the moment that man believed again. And it's like that with you too. Jesus is before you now, not asking if you deserve it, not judging you for the time you spent standing still, but looking you in the eye and saying, do you still believe? Then get up. I'm here. If this word confronted you, comment right now. Jesus is enough for me. Write it down as a leap of faith, as a sign that even though tired, you still want to believe. Your comment could be exactly what someone needs to believe again. Jesus speaks to you even when everything seems stagnant, even when the days repeat themselves, even when others advance and you are still on the ground. Because what he has for you doesn't depend on the tank, on luck, or on anyone's help. It depends on his presence. And that presence is now there with you. And that's not all. Something even deeper is about to be revealed. There is a story that touches the most sensitive point of the soul, the feeling of being too dirty, too unworthy, too broken to be loved. But what happens there will change the way you see God's touch. He arrived without warning, without ceremony. No fear. A leper. A man whose presence provoked fear, disgust, and withdrawal. He no longer had a name or identity. He was just the leper. At that time, leprosy was more than a physical illness. It was a social and spiritual sentence. To be a leper was to be considered unclean, cursed. It was living in isolation, as if the contaminated body also revealed a stained soul. And it was in this state that he dared to approach Jesus. Broke rules. He faced looks. Broke barriers, because when pain exceeds the limit of what is bearable, even fear gives way to hope. He kneels. It doesn't require it. Don't accuse, don't murmur. He pleads with humility and disconcerting faith. If you wish, you can purify me. Mark 1:40. What's behind these words? A wounded heart that does not doubt the power of God, but fears that it is not worthy of his attention. How many times have you thought this way too? I know God can, but does he want to reach me? I've done so much wrong. I've come so far away. I'm so dirty inside. Why would he touch me? The leper had no doubt about power, but about love. And maybe now you are in that place too, knowing that Jesus can, but doubting that he still wants you. Jesus' answer did not come in words alone. It came in gesture. He extended his hand and touched him. Jesus touched the untouchable. The pure touched the impure. The saint touched the rejected one. What everyone avoided, Jesus faced head-on. And the most surprising thing, he could have healed with a word from a distance. I'd already done this before, but here, he chose touch. Because that man's healing needed to go deeper than the skin. He needed to feel like he wasn't invisible, that he was still worthy of love, that even as a leper, it was still achievable. This is the kind of love Jesus offers when he speaks to you, a love that does not shrink from your shame, but approaches with compassion. The next verse says, "And Jesus, moved with compassion, stretched out his hand and touched him and said, 'I will, be clean.'" Mark 1:41. Pay attention to this. Jesus not only he wants to restore you. It wants to cleanse you of guilt, hurt, shame. He wants to take that weight off your heart. Because to him, you were never just a mistake. You were always a son. It was always seen, he was always loved. Leprosy today can be emotional. It could be a hidden addiction, unhealed trauma, the lie that holds you back. But Jesus speaks to you now saying, I touch you. I clean you. If this message touched your heart, comment right now, Jesus purifies me. Write this with faith, like a declaration of surrender, like a step towards his touch. Your comment could be exactly what someone on the other side of the screen needs to read to feel hope again. And maybe now you're asking yourself, but is it possible that even after being away for so long, Jesus still receives me? Is there still time to go back? What you are about to discover will change the way you see everything. Because the next encounter doesn't happen on the side of the road or in a tank, it happens at a distance. A return marked by shame, but received with compassion. A story that reveals a father who never stopped waiting. John the Baptist, the man who heard the voice of God while still in his mother's womb. He who baptized Jesus himself and saw the Holy Spirit descend like a dove. The one who pointed to the Messiah and declared, "Behold the Lamb of God, who takes away the sin of the world." That same man was now in prison, forgotten in a dark cell, suffocated by doubts, plagued by silence, and by a question that echoed like a hammer in his heart. Was I right? Loneliness does that to us, corrodes, distorts memories, it shakes convictions. John did not deny who he was, but for a moment he could no longer see clearly who Jesus was. Are you the one who would come? Matthew 11:3. The doubt that Joan threw into the sky in that cell echoes to this day in thousands of hearts that are trapped not by chains, but by emotional crises, by nights without answers, by silences that hurt. John was tired, hurt by the weight, confused by the contrast between what he expected God to do and what was actually happening. Because, let's face it, if Jesus really was the Messiah, why was John still in prison? Why didn't God take him out of that darkness? This is the silent cry that many make today. If the Lord is with me, why am I still like this? Why do I continue to feel this emptiness? This loneliness drowns me. This doubt paralyzes me. This pain seems eternal. John the Baptist did not lose his faith. He lost his clarity. And maybe you are in that place too. You still believe, but you don't see a way out. He still has faith, but he feels alone. And it is in this place of darkness that Jesus speaks to you. Jesus' response was unexpected. He did not respond with reproof, nor with deep theology. He just told John's messengers, "Go back and tell him what you see and hear. The blind see, the lame walk, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor are preached the good news." Matthew 11:4-5. In other words, Jesus was saying, John, I am still the one you knew. Even though your scene has not changed, the kingdom is moving forward. Even though you cannot see it, the miracle is happening. Even though you are silent, I continue to act. This response has the power to heal the soul, because it shows that the presence of God does not depend on what we feel, but on what He has already declared. He is God, even when you are in doubt. He is God even when the miracle didn't come as you imagined. Jesus did not free John from that prison, but it freed John's heart from doubt. He did not take the prophet out of the cell, but he took the cell out of the prophet. And that is much more powerful. Maybe your prayer today doesn't need to be, Lord, change everything around me. Perhaps the cry of your heart should be, Jesus, change my insides so I can see that you are still here. If this message spoke to you, comment right now, Jesus, strengthen my faith. Declare this in the comments as a prayer, not just to be read, but to be felt. Your comment could be a bridge for someone who is also immersed in doubts and needs a word of hope. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed, because sometimes the biggest shock to the soul is not doubt nor fear, but the pain of losing someone and not knowing how to continue living. Maria had her eyes fixed on the horizon, as if she wanted to see the impossible happen. Martha walked from one side to the other, trying to hide her despair with household chores that didn't need to be done. And the body of Lazarus was already in the tomb. 4 days. 4 days, with no answers, no movement, no miracle. All that was left was grief, the smell of death, and the painful feeling that Jesus had arrived too late. If you were here, my brother wouldn't have died. John 11:21. These words of Martha are not just a lament. They are an open wound, a cry that says, "Where were you when I needed you most?" And perhaps right now, you are also carrying this pain. The pain of having lost something or someone, and the feeling that God was late. But what Martha and Mary didn't yet know was that Jesus is never late. He always comes at the exact time. And when he arrives, he doesn't just bring comfort. He brings resurrection. Before performing any miracle, Jesus wept, John 11:35. Yes, the God who has all power also has a heart, and that heart is moved by your pain. He doesn't ignore your tears. He doesn't belittle your grief. Jesus cried because he felt their pain, and cry with you now. This scene changes everything. It reveals that before transforming your situation, Jesus first enters your pain. He sits next to you, he listens to your silence. He shares the weight of your suffering, and then faced with death, faced with unbelief, faced with the impossible, Jesus shouts, "Lazarus, come out," John 11:43. And death had to obey. What had been buried for days came out walking. Because when Jesus speaks, even what seems irreversible comes back to life. What this story teaches us is something that human words could never fully explain. Jesus doesn't just restore. He cries, he feels, he is present. His presence does not eliminate suffering, but transforms its meaning. Even when everything seems over, even when the tomb has already been sealed, Jesus speaks to you. And when he speaks, even those who were considered dead must rise. Have you lost someone, a loved one, a dream, a part of yourself? Do you feel like no one understands how big the void is? There is a truth that needs to invade your heart now. Jesus doesn't just resurrect dreams. He cries with you. And perhaps, more than an immediate miracle, you just need to know that he is still there, by your side. With teary eyes, feeling what you feel, holding you up without saying a word, because God's presence doesn't always come with thunder and signs. Sometimes it manifests itself in silent tears that say, "I am here." If this message spoke to your heart, write in the comments, "Jesus, sit with me." This simple act of writing can be a healing step. Your comment could be the breath of hope that someone around the world desperately needs to read. Don't underestimate the power of what you share. And take a deep breath now. Imagine Jesus entering where your deepest pain is and saying firmly, "Take away the stone." But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed, because there are times when the pain does not come from loss, but from the feeling that everything has lost its meaning. He had everything, and suddenly he had nothing. Your children, your wealth, your health, your dignity. Job was covered in ashes, wounds, and unanswered questions. Friends accused him, his wife told him to give up, and heaven seemed closed. Nothing made sense, and perhaps this is exactly the part of the story that touches us the most. Because when we are at rock bottom, what hurts most is not just the pain itself. It is not understanding why. Why me? Why now? Why did God allow it? Job was not a bad man. On the contrary, he was righteous, God-fearing. Still, he suffered. And there, amidst the dust and pain, he said, "I know that my Redeemer lives." Job 19:25. This sentence did not come after everything was restored. She came in the middle of the tragedy. This changes everything. Job teaches us that even without explanations, it is possible to have hope. Even when the sky seems silent, even when logic fails, even when everything seems lost, there is a certainty that sustains. God has not stopped writing your story. Perhaps you are living the darkest chapter of your life today. Nothing makes sense. The days seem to drag by and prayers seem to hit the ceiling. But listen, Jesus speaks to you. And he doesn't just speak when everything is fine. He speaks in the midst of pain, in the crisis, in confusion. When in doubt, the Redeemer is not just the one who saves. He is the one who sees you when no one else does, who hears you when everyone silences you, who moves when everything seems still. And you know what's even more powerful? It is knowing that God's answer to Job was not a why, it was an I am. He did not explain the suffering, but he revealed his presence. Because more than answers, what you need now is the certainty that God is with you, that he has not abandoned you, that even without understanding, you can trust. This is faith. Faith is not the absence of pain. Faith is choosing to remain, even in the midst of chaos. And when you choose to trust, even without explanations, the sky opens in a way that reason could never explain. Job in the end saw God with his own eyes, but it all started with a decision to believe, even without seeing. Talk, even without listening. Wait, even without guarantees. If this message spoke to your heart, write in the comments, I know that my Redeemer lives. Maybe you won't see anything now, but this declaration could be the first step for the miracle to begin. Your comment could be an anchor for someone who is drowning in questions. Don't keep this faith to yourself. Share it, because there is someone, right now, struggling to believe that there is purpose in so much pain. Show them they are not alone, and here comes the most impressive part of this story. Because there are situations where the pain is too big to hide, but too small for anyone to notice. It's when you smile on the outside, but inside, you're imploding. Peter had promised that he would never abandon Jesus. With all his strength, he said, even if everyone leaves you, I will never leave you. It was sincere, believer, determined. But the moment everything started to fall apart, when the pressure tightened, when the cross approached, he broke. And he didn't just stumble, he denied it. 3 times, he swore that he didn't even know the one to whom he swore eternal fidelity. And soon after, the rooster crowed. At that moment, Jesus' gaze met Peter's. It wasn't an angry look. It was pain, compassion, a silence more eloquent than 1,000 words. And Peter, he left there and cried bitterly. That crying wasn't just regret. It was despair. It was suffocating guilt. It was the certainty that I had failed God in an unforgivable way. Maybe you know this feeling. The weight of having made a mistake, of having denied the one you love, of having strayed from the path. Maybe you're crying inside too, still stuck in that moment when everything came crashing down. But here's what almost no one tells you. Jesus knew Peter would fall, and he still called him. Even so, he entrusted his church to him. Even so, after the resurrection, he sought him out, not to confront, but to restore. 3 denials, 3 declarations of love. Peter, do you love me? And there, before the same Jesus he had denied, Peter responded with his heart in pieces. You know that I love you. This is not just a story of forgiveness. It's a story of reconstruction. Jesus doesn't just forgive your fall. He gives you a new purpose, a new beginning. He takes the pieces of your guilt and transforms it into an instrument of salvation. Because where the world sees failure, God sees the future. The pain of guilt is one of the loneliest. It whispers that you are not worthy, that there is no going back, that God no longer wants to hear your voice. But Jesus speaks to you, and when he speaks, it's not to accuse you, it's to lift you up. The cross was not only to save you from hell, but also to free you from the guilt that imprisons you. He saw everything you did, and yet he loves you. Still it calls you, still believe in yourself. Not because you deserve it, but because he is grace. And grace does not abandon you at the worst moment. It approaches. If this message touched you deeply, comment now, Jesus restores me. Don't be afraid to declare this. There is power in saying out loud what your heart is whispering. Your comment may be what another wounded heart needs to read to allow itself to come back. Return to the Father. Return to faith. Return to life. You are not alone in this pain. Many are experiencing this same internal battle, this war between regret and the fear of not being accepted. But the truth is, Jesus is already on the path, coming to meet you. And here comes something that can completely transform the way you see the past. Your greatest failure can become your greatest testimony if you allow Jesus into your story. She was there, surrounded by men with stones in their hands and eyes full of condemnation. They didn't see a soul in pain. They didn't see a heart in pieces. They only saw error, the scandal, sin exposed, the adulterous woman dragged to Jesus' feet like a trophy of shame. His past was there, wide open in front of the crowd, with no defense, no escape. The weight of what she did, the shame of being seen, touched, mentioned. She was scum, and what could you expect from a holy man? A trial? A harsh word? A definitive sentence? But faced with the piercing silence of his accusers, Jesus bends down and writes on the ground. Without shouting, without accusing, without responding to the pressure of the crowd, he just says, "Let him who is without sin among you cast the first stone." One by one, the men drop the stones and leave. There are only two left, the woman and Jesus. And here comes what changes everything. His gaze does not judge, don't condemn. His mouth does not scream, does not expose, does not punish. "Woman, where are your accusers? Has no one condemned you?" She responds in a weak voice, perhaps choked with pain, "No one, Lord." And then he says what she never expected to hear, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." That woman did not receive a punishment. He got a fresh start. Jesus found her at the bottom of the well and reached out his hand. He saw beyond the mistake, beyond the shame, beyond the past. He saw the heart. Maybe today you feel exactly like her, carrying a story that embarrasses you, memories that hurt you, choices that left an impression on you. Maybe you think you don't deserve forgiveness. That has already gone too far. That condemnation is inevitable, but Jesus speaks to you. And when he speaks, guilt is silent. When he speaks, shame is silenced. When he speaks, the past loses its power. In Christ, there is no condemnation. There is a cure, there is new life, there is hope. If this message spoke to your heart, comment now, "Jesus gives me a new beginning." It's not just about you. Someone may need to read this to remember that there is still redemption. Your comment could be the spark that reignites faith in another hurting heart. Don't hide your pain anymore. Jesus already knows every detail, and yet he calls you close. And here comes the most amazing part. What the world uses to shame you, God can use as proof of his love. Because your story, marked by falls and mistakes, could be the setting for the most transformative miracle of your life. And that will change the way you see everything. He was walking down the road, his feet covered in dust, his stomach empty, his heart even more so. What was once home was now just a distant memory. The father's hug, the laughter in the corridors, the scent of the set table. All of this seemed to have disappeared like smoke. He had left with arrogance and returned with regret. He no longer felt like a son. He felt dirty, distant, without the right to anything else. How to ask for forgiveness when the mistake was so big? How can you expect acceptance after having turned your back on everything that was most sacred? Every step toward home was an internal battle. What if his father rejected him? What if you didn't even want to hear your voice? What if it was already too late? But then, still from afar, his father saw him. God's response to shame is never indifference. God's response from a distance is never silence. The Bible says, while he was still far away, his father saw him and full of compassion ran to his son, hugged him and kissed him. Jesus speaks to you through this parable. He is saying, even if you are far away, he has already seen you. He doesn't wait for you to clean yourself up first. He demands no explanations. He runs to you. He interrupts your speech of guilt with an embrace of mercy. And maybe, like that son, you are tired too. Tired of living far away, of trying to fill the void with things that are never enough. Tired of pretending that everything is fine. Maybe you are afraid to pray because you believe you have failed so much. But here's the truth that breaks all accusations. God doesn't love a perfect version of you. He loves you now exactly as you are. He doesn't want to punish you. He wants to dress you in new clothes, put a ring on your finger, prepare a banquet, and declare that his lost son has returned home. If this message is deeply touching your heart, write in the comments, "Father, I want to go back." It doesn't matter how long ago you left. It doesn't matter what you did. It doesn't matter how many times you fall. God is waiting for you, and the first step towards him is always followed by a rush of love from heaven to your heart. Your comment could be exactly the bridge someone needs to come back to. And perhaps the most impactful of all is this: the prodigal son was not just forgiven. It has been restored, reinstated as a son, celebrated, accepted. And that's not just his story. That could be your story today. Because Jesus speaks to you, and when he speaks, even what was dead comes back to life. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. He sat down, not in front of a crowd, not in a pulpit, not before a council chamber. He sat alone, in silence, and then he cried. There were no spotlights. There was no human comfort. Just him, his tears, and the weight of a pain that no one could see. Nehemiah, the king's cupbearer, was faced with heartbreaking news. The walls of the city of his fathers were destroyed. Jerusalem was a symbol of shame and ruin. He could have ignored it, gone about his life in the palace, served the king's wine with a smile, hiding his anguish as many of us do. But he couldn't. The pain hit, stayed, and spread inside. And there, in that moment of total vulnerability, Nehemiah did what few have the courage to do. He didn't hide it. He sat and cried and mourned for days. The Bible records, "I sat down and wept and lamented for some days." Nehemiah 1:4. It wasn't just sadness. It was a deep lament, a cry of the soul for something that seemed lost. Jesus speaks to you even on those days when no one sees your tears, when the pain doesn't make a noise but consumes you inside, when you smile on the outside but your soul is bleeding in silence, when you feel like if you talk, no one will understand. Nehemiah teaches us that God responds even to hidden groans, even to cries muffled into the pillow. Maybe today you are like him, with a sadness that doesn't give a name, a weight that you can't explain, a pain that even you don't fully understand. Maybe you're trying to keep going, disguising it, but inside, everything is falling apart. But listen to this with an open heart. The crying that no one sees, God collects. Silent prayer, God listens. God transforms the lonely tear into a strategy. What Nehemiah experienced proves that even sadness that seems too small to notice can be the key to something too big to imagine. Nehemiah was not a priest, not a king, not a prophet. He was just a butler. But their silent pain was the beginning of a reconstruction movement that impacted an entire nation. Because God does not choose people by force, but by delivery. Not because of status, but because of sensitivity to what breaks his heart. When Nehemiah wept, he didn't know that God was already preparing wood, letters, armies, and everything that would be needed. His sadness activated the sky. If this word is touching your soul, write in the comments, "God, I am here too." Maybe you don't know what to say, don't have the strength for big prayers, but know, God does not require oratory. He responds with sincerity. Your comment could be the courage someone else needs to stop hiding their pain and start seeking healing. Nehemiah sat, cried, and prayed. And with that, without realizing it, he rose up as the leader of a reconstruction. If today you are sitting in silence, crying in secret, God wants you to know He is watching. and he is moving. Jesus speaks to you even when no one else listens, but that's not all. Something even deeper is about to be revealed. David was at his peak, king of Israel, victorious in battles, honored by the people, a man after God's own heart. But all it took was a moment of carelessness, a wrong choice, a hidden sin, and everything fell apart inside. He had taken Bathsheba, another man's wife, and to cover up his mistake, he caused Uriah's death. The king, the one who played harps and wrote psalms of praise, now walked with a heart full of guilt, trying to hide what in God's eyes was already completely exposed. The guilt was silent but brutal. She doesn't scream on the outside, but crushes on the inside. And the more you try to cover it up, the more it suffocates. David tried to continue as if nothing had happened, but his soul could no longer bear the weight of what he had done. Then he fell to his knees, not before an army, but before an all-seeing God. And he said, "Create in me, O God, a pure heart, and renew a steadfast spirit within me." Psalms 51:10. That wasn't just a prayer. It was a cry from someone who recognizes that they can no longer carry so much guilt. Jesus speaks to you exactly in those moments when the weight of guilt seems greater than your faith. When you look back and only see error, when your memory becomes a court and your conscience becomes an accuser. Maybe you made decisions that haunt you today. Maybe you did what you swore you would never do. Maybe you've hurt people, crossed lines, and now feel like you're no longer worthy of even talking to God. Guilt has this power. It makes us forget who we are and who God is. But Psalm 51 reminds us that even when you fail God, He does not fail you. David sinned seriously, but he found in God something that no one else could offer: restoration. And not a partial restoration, but a complete one. God didn't just forgive David. He raised him up, healed him, turned mourning into song and sin into testimony. If this word is speaking to you, comment now: "Jesus, purify my heart." This simple phrase can be the first step to breaking the cycle of guilt and starting to live again. Your comment may be exactly what someone else needs to read to feel less alone in this battle. Maybe you are living with a past that no one knows about. Maybe even in church, among friends, you maintain your disguise. But God knows, and yet He loves you. Jesus speaks to you to let you know. Guilt is not the end. It is the point where grace begins. When David wrote this psalm, he was no longer trying to hide anything. He was completely vulnerable before God. And it was exactly this surrender that paved the way for a cure that man could never achieve on his own. It's powerful when we realize that in God's mathematics, our worst days do not cancel His plans. What you were taught about sin may distance you from the presence of God, but what Jesus wants to show you is that even the most shameful mistake can become an altar of repentance and a new beginning. The problem is not making mistakes. The problem is remaining distant when He is calling you back. David shows us that it's not about how much you made a mistake, but about how much you want to come back. And when you return with sincerity, heaven does not welcome you with judgment, but with open arms. Jesus speaks to you now to remind you, grace is greater than guilt. Forgiveness is deeper than a mistake, and His love is unconditional. But that's not all. Something even more powerful is about to be revealed. Moses walked with the weight of the world on his shoulders. The people murmured, decisions multiplied, judgments were constant, needs were endless. Day after day, he got up before everyone else and was the last to rest. He listened to the people's pain, resolved conflicts, sought guidance from God, led an entire nation in the middle of the desert. In the eyes of many, Moses was steadfast, a strong leader chosen by God, but inside he was wasting away. Until his father-in-law Jethro, observing everything, said what no one else had had the courage to say: "What you are doing is not good." Exodus 18:17. It was direct, it was tough, but it was freeing. Sometimes what seems like strength is actually a silent cry for help. How many times have we tried to carry everything ourselves? Family, work, responsibilities, ministry, unresolved emotions, pending decisions. And even though we are exhausted, we smile on the outside so as not to worry anyone. But the heart screams in silence, "I can't handle it." Jesus speaks to you right now to remind you that you were not created to bear everything alone. There is a limit. There is a point where burden stops being a sign of responsibility and becomes an unnecessary burden. What Jethro did for Moses, God is now doing for you. He is telling you to keep it up. Not good. And perhaps this phrase has more impact than it seems. Because many who are watching now are living like this, taking on everyone's responsibilities, trying to keep everything together, avoiding falling apart just so as not to disappoint. But the problem is that while you try to be strong for everyone, you lose yourself. And worse, you begin to move away from your dependence on God. Have you ever found yourself saying, "If I don't do it, no one will do it"? Or "I can't stop now, there's a lot on my hands"? This type of mentality, even though it may seem noble, is rooted in pride disguised as zeal. And that sickens the soul. What you were taught about being strong may have led you to a desert of loneliness, and what they told you about faith may have made you think that seeking help was a sign of weakness. But Jesus speaks to you now to deconstruct this lie. He didn't create you to be the pillar of everything. He is your livelihood. And if you are trying to occupy the place of absolute strength, be careful. This is God's ground, not yours. Constant exhaustion could actually be the Spirit warning you that it's time to surrender. If this message is speaking directly to you, comment now, "Lord, help me deliver." These words may seem simple, but they carry tremendous power when said sincerely. Your comment could be the spark that ignites the courage of someone who is also overwhelmed, struggling in silence. Because many people don't need advice, they just need to know that they are not alone. Just as Moses needed to hear that he wasn't doing his best, perhaps today is the day God uses these words to ease the weight you've been carrying for so long. It's time to delegate. It's time to breathe. It's time to remember that the world won't stop if you rest. But your heart may stop if you don't hear God's call to ease the burden. Jesus doesn't just call you to rest, he invites you to trust. In Matthew 11:28, he says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." This is not religious poetry. This is a real invitation. Liberation begins when you admit, "I need help." Moses understood this and reorganized his life, his leadership, his routine. And do you know what happened? He remained leader. He remained respected. He remained used by God. But now, take it. And you can live like this too, lighter, more free, more connected to the source of strength that is Jesus. It's not about being weak, it's about being wise. And trust that the God who called you also supports the path that he himself prepared. And here comes the most impressive part of this story. The prison walls were cold. The damp ground reflected the absence of any hope. There were no windows, there was no comfort, there was no certainty that there would be a tomorrow. It was the end of the line for many, but not for Paulo and Silas. Unjustly accused, beaten and thrown into a dark cell, shackled by their feet, the pain still burned in their bodies. But at midnight, at the most unlikely time, in the most desolate place, something supernatural began to happen. There were no screams, laments, or despair. They were hymns, yes, hymns, praise, worship. Paulo and Silas, deep in that prison, began to sing. And the Bible says in Acts 16:25, about midnight, Paul and Silas prayed and sang hymns to God, and the other prisoners listened to them. And suddenly, an earthquake, so violent that the foundations of the prison moved. The chains broke. The doors opened. But the most impactful thing was not the physical miracle. It was the emotional and spiritual miracle. Because the biggest prison that broke that night wasn't made of iron, it was loneliness. There are people who are trapped in emotional realities as dark as a cell, trapped in unresolved grief, in memories that still hurt, in broken relationships, in internal crises that no one sees. And maybe what you're facing right now isn't a literal chain, but something that suffocates you inside, like everything around you is falling apart. The external chaos is just a reflection of what is screaming inside the soul. But Jesus speaks to you now, even there, in the midst of chaos. I am still God. When everything is falling apart, when you see no way out, when you feel that pain has silenced your faith, that's when praise has the most power. Not because he ignores suffering, but because he declares a truth greater than suffering. Paul and Silas did not sing because everything was fine. They sang because they knew that even in the midst of chaos, God was still with them. If this message is touching your heart, tell us in the comments. Even in prison, I trust in Jesus. And if you can, stop now for a moment. Click the like button and share this video with someone who needs hope. Not just as a gesture, but as an act of faith. You may be being instrumental in opening someone else's emotional prison, because when Paul and Silas sang, the other prisoners were also freed. And this detail is no coincidence. Your praise, even when hurt, has the power to free others too. And do you know what the end result of that night was? The jailer guarding Paul and Silas, the one who had previously been about to take his own life, was also saved. Him and his entire household, because where there was ruin, God planted redemption. Where there was scream, song was born. Where everything seemed lost, a new beginning emerged. This is not just ancient history, it is an eternal truth. The same God who opened those doors is here now, before you, and he is not asking you to make effort. He's calling you to trust, to worship even without strength, to praise even without understanding. Because praise in the midst of chaos is not illusion. It is faith in action. You may be surrounded by diagnoses, late bills, broken promises, old pain. You may even feel like you are alone in this dark cell of life. But what you do not see with natural eyes, heaven is about to manifest. When you choose to praise, you activate God's supernatural move. He enters where no one else enters. He breaks chains that no one else sees. And he turns every tear into a living testimony that nothing is stronger than his presence. So sing, cry, but don't be silent, because midnight is still the stage for miracles, for those who decide to trust even without seeing. And here comes the most powerful part. You don't have to wait for the door to open to worship. Worship opens the door. Jesus speaks to you, and what he is saying now is not just comfort, it is summoning. It's time to react. To rise up from within, to transform this valley of tears into an altar. Because whoever worships in the midst of pain attracts heaven into the cell. Your light can be God's instrument to reach other lives. If this message touched your heart, click the like button and subscribe to the channel to continue receiving words that renew faith. May this simple gesture be a prophetic act, because the next prison to open could be yours. And here comes something even deeper. Silence can be deafening. Sometimes what hurts most is not the harsh words, nor the difficult circumstances, but the lack of response. There are times when the pain screams inside us, and all we want is to hear a word. One direction, a consolation, a sign that God is still there. But then it seems that he remains silent. There are no visions, there are no confirmations, there are no miracles, and the heart anguishes. Because God's silence is one of the deepest tests of faith. This is where many give up. It is during this season that many believe they have been forgotten, that God doesn't care. Who prayed in vain? But what if I told you that God's silence is actually part of a much larger, divine plan? Jesus, the Son of God, also experienced this silence. Before Pilate, at the most tense moment of the trial, when his fate was in the hands of corrupt men, the expectation was that he would defend himself. That showed his power, that argued his innocence. But the Bible says in Matthew 27:14, "But Jesus answered nothing, no words, no explanation, no reaction, just silence." And what seemed like weakness was, in fact, contained strength. Jesus' silence wasn't giving up. It was domination. It was delivery. It was the certainty that the Father was still in control, even when heaven seemed silent. Have you ever felt this? Have you ever prayed expecting an urgent answer and all you got was silence? Have you ever asked God, why don't you talk to me? Why don't you do something? Why do you seem so distant now that I need you most? But what you're about to discover will change the way you see everything. Because God's silence does not mean absence. It means maturity. It means trust. It means He is operating on a level that your senses cannot capture. Often when God is silent, it is because He is working in silence, and this work is deeper than we can imagine. He is strengthening your faith. He is aligning the time. He is setting the perfect stage for something that cannot be rushed. Jesus speaks to you even when you don't hear anything. And sometimes He speaks louder in silence than in screams. In silence, He teaches us to trust. It challenges us to believe without seeing, walking without emotional crutches. It is there that our faith stops being superficial and becomes root. God's silence shapes our character, breaks our pride, and teaches us to rest, not in answers, but in presence. Remember, when Jesus remained silent before Pilate, it was not the end, it was the beginning of redemption. Heaven was preparing for the greatest act of love in history. Silence preceded the cross, and the cross preceded the resurrection. In other words, God's silence is a stage before the miracle, a prelude before glory. He didn't abandon you. He's just preparing you, and the deeper the waiting, the more extraordinary the manifestation. If this word touched your heart, comment now. Even in silence, I trust in you, Jesus. Your comment could be the encouragement someone needs today. Sometimes a phrase full of faith can rescue a soul that is about to give up. Be that light, be that channel. And remember, just because you don't hear God doesn't mean He isn't speaking. His silence is a language, and the entire sky moves in response to your perseverance. So take a deep breath. Allow yourself to feel this message. Close your eyes, and even without words, say, Jesus, I know you are here. And He is. He always has been, and it always will be. Because the presence of God does not depend on noise or emotion. It is an eternal truth, an invisible but powerful anchor. And today, now, at this very moment, He involves you in the deepest of silences. Not to punish you, but to form you. Because silence is the place where the greatest testimonies are born, and yours is on the way. If you've come this far, it's because there is something bigger calling you. It's no coincidence. It's purpose. It is divine direction. You were led to this message because God saw your pain in silence, your silent struggle, your tired heart, and decided to speak to you in a clear, direct, and supernatural way. Throughout this journey, we have seen that the absence of noise is not the absence of presence. God's silence is not punishment, it is construction. It is in silence that He shapes you. It is in this apparent emptiness that He is closer than ever. Because Jesus speaks to you, even when everything seems silent. Breathe, feel it. This presence that now surrounds your heart does not come from me. It does not come from words. It comes from Him. And if everything around you is falling apart, know there is a reconstruction happening inside you. God is lifting you from the inside so that when the miracle arrives from the outside, your structure is ready to support the blessing. You are not forgotten. It's not invisible. And He was never alone. Now, I want to invite you to something deeper. A prayer, but not just any prayer. This is a prayer of liberation, a true delivery, a step of faith that could be the watershed between yesterday marked by pain and today filled with hope. If you feel like you need strength to continue, that you can no longer bear this weight alone, this prayer is for you. Pray with me, with a torn heart, with all the sincerity of your soul. Lord Jesus, at this moment I place before you everything that crushes me in silence, the pains that I can't explain, the questions I didn't have answers to, the nights I cried and thought you weren't listening. Today I understand. Your silence was not abandonment, it was care. You were preparing me, you were forming me. I give you the burden of loneliness, anxiety, doubt, fear. Take this weight off of me that I can no longer carry. Free me, Lord, from everything that has kept me from your peace. Heal my heart from the wounds that I hid even from myself. I receive your presence now. Talk to me, Jesus. And even if I don't hear words, may I never doubt that you are here. Amen. If this prayer spoke to you, comment now, I made it to the end, because this simple comment can spark hope in the heart of someone who is still struggling to believe. And more, share this video with someone who needs liberation. You can be the channel that God wants to use to transform a life. Don't keep it to yourself. This video could be the answer to someone's prayer. Be that answer. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel, do it now. Not just for me, but for you. Because here, each video is a breath of God in the midst of chaos. Every word is built to lift you, heal you, restore you. Signing up is like saying, Jesus, I want to keep hearing your voice. And pay close attention. The video that is on the screen now is the spiritual continuation of that message. It is the complement of what heaven began in you today. What you will discover there may be what was needed for your complete liberation. Don't ignore it. Click now. Don't miss it. Because God still has more to reveal to you. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. Jeremiah 29:11. You didn't get here by chance. Heaven brought you. And the journey is not over yet. Jesus speaks to you, and it's just beginning.